I was setting up our 15th anniversary dinner when I found the second phone hidden in his gym bag. That's when I realized the man I'd spent half my life with had been living a completely different existence just 40 miles away. But instead of falling apart, I decided to throw the most unforgettable dinner party of our lives. My name is Jennifer, and for 15 years I thought I had the perfect marriage. My husband Mark was a regional sales manager who traveled constantly, sometimes gone for days at a time, always with reasonable explanations. Business conferences in Chicago. Client meetings in Detroit. I never questioned it because Mark was meticulous and organized. He'd show me photos from hotel lobbies, forward flight confirmations, and bring back souvenirs. Why would I doubt him? We lived in a comfortable suburb of Columbus, Ohio. I worked as a middle school teacher, and we had 2 kids, Emma, who was 13, and Jake, who was 10. Our life was beautifully ordinary. Soccer games on Saturdays, family dinners when Mark was home, annual vacations to the same beach house. Mark was attentive when around, remembered birthdays, helped with homework, and still kissed me goodbye every morning. If anything, I felt guilty for how easy my life seemed compared to my divorced friends. The discovery happened on a Tuesday afternoon in late September. I'd taken the day off because our anniversary was Thursday, and I wanted to plan something special. 15 years felt significant. I'd been thinking about a romantic dinner at home with the kids at my sister's place, wanting to recreate our wedding menu, light candles everywhere, maybe dance in the living room like we used to. Mark had left early that morning for what he said was a quick trip to Indianapolis, promising he'd be back by Wednesday evening. After he left, I decided to deep clean the house. I was in our bedroom when I noticed his gym bag in the back of the closet. Mark usually took it on trips to work out at hotel gyms, but this one had been left behind. I figured I'd wash his workout clothes as a nice gesture. When I unzipped the bag, I found the usual stuff on top, but my hand hit something hard in the interior pocket. It was a phone. Not Mark's regular iPhone with a blue case, but a Samsung with a plain black cover. My first thought was it might be a work phone, but when I pressed the power button and it lit up without requiring a password, that explanation crumbled. The home screen showed a photo I'd never seen. Mark was in it, smiling that same wide grin I'd fallen in love with in college, but standing in a different living room with his arms around a woman I didn't recognize and 2 children who weren't ours. The woman was pretty, maybe a few years younger than me, with dark hair. The kids looked young, maybe 6 and 8. They were all wearing matching Christmas sweaters, clearly a family photo from last December when Mark told me he needed to work through the holidays. My hands started shaking. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened his messages. The most recent conversation was with someone named Lisa, and the preview showed yesterday's text. "The kids miss you. When are you coming home?" I clicked into the thread and started scrolling. With each message, my entire reality disintegrated. Lisa wasn't a coworker. She was calling him honey and baby, sending photos of dinner she'd cooked, asking if he'd picked up milk, reminding him about parent-teacher conferences. She was texting him exactly the way I texted him. I scrolled back further. The messages went on for years. Literally years. Conversations about potty training and first days of school and vacation planning. Inside jokes and complaints about broken appliances and discussions about bills. It was an entire parallel life, documented in thousands of casual text messages that showed a routine as mundane and real as my own. Lisa had no idea I existed, just like I'd had no idea she existed. I ran to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. How was this even possible? How do you maintain 2 completely separate families without either one finding out? I thought about all those business trips, all those nights away, and realized he must have been splitting his time between us. When he told me he was in Indianapolis, he was probably just in the next town over having dinner with Lisa and those kids. I went back to the phone and opened his photo gallery. Hundreds of pictures I'd never seen. Birthday parties and school plays and casual weekends at parks. Mark teaching a little boy to ride a bike. Mark reading bedtime stories to a little girl. Mark and Lisa on what looked like a date night. There were even photos from a beach vacation last summer when Mark told me he had back-to-back conferences. In every single photo, he looked genuinely happy. That's what broke me. Not just the betrayal, but the realization that this wasn't some affair he was trying to escape. He wasn't miserable leading a double life. He seemed perfectly comfortable inhabiting both worlds, switching between identities as easily as changing clothes. He'd compartmentalized so effectively that he could be fully present in both lives. I spent the next hour going through everything on that phone. His calendar showed the truth behind all his lies. A conference in Detroit was actually his daughter's dance recital. Training in Cleveland was his son's baseball championship. The pattern became clear. He'd created an elaborate rotation system, spending roughly half his time with each family, using a sales job as cover. I found Lisa on social media using the phone. She lived in a town called Riverside, about 45 minutes from our house. Her relationship status said married and listed Mark's profile, though he'd created a separate Facebook account I'd never known about. Looking at Lisa's posts, I could see their life together. First day of school photos. Anniversary posts about her amazing husband. Check-ins at restaurants in Riverside. She was living the exact same life I was, just in a different location. The rational thing would have been to call Mark immediately and confront him, or call a lawyer. But I wasn't feeling rational. I was feeling something cold and focused that I'd never experienced before. I wanted Mark to face the full consequences of what he'd done, not just in private arguments, but in a moment of complete exposure, where both of his carefully constructed worlds collided simultaneously. I wanted him to experience the same shock I was feeling, multiplied by the presence of everyone he'd lied to. That's when I came up with the plan for the anniversary dinner. Our 15th anniversary was in 2 days, and Mark would be home Wednesday evening expecting a romantic celebration. What if I gave him exactly that, but with a few extra guests? I picked up the secret phone and started typing a message to Lisa, carefully mimicking Mark's texting style. I texted her, "Hey babe, I know this is last minute, but I need to bring you and the kids to Columbus on Thursday evening for a work thing. Dinner with some important clients, and my boss really wants to show that family-focused culture thing. Can you make it work? Around 7? I'll send you the address." I held my breath waiting for her response. Lisa wrote back, "That's pretty short notice. The kids have school Friday morning. How late will it go?" I responded, "Should be done by 9. It's really important for my career. Please." Another pause. Then, "Okay, we can make it work. Should we dress up?" I told her business casual would be perfect. She sent back a heart emoji and said she loved me. I had to put the phone down after that. This woman had no idea what was about to happen to her life either. Next, I had to make sure Mark would actually be home expecting a normal anniversary dinner. I texted him on his regular phone. "Can't wait for Thursday. I'm planning something special for our anniversary. Please don't make any plans after 6. He responded almost immediately with heart emojis and, "Wouldn't miss it for the world, love you." The casual ease of his lie made my stomach turn. Wednesday evening came, and Mark arrived home right on schedule with flowers and a gift bag. I watched him from the living room window, taking a moment to study him. He looked exactly the same as always. This was the man I'd built my entire adult life around, and I didn't know him at all. I opened the door with a smile that felt like it might crack my face. Mark kissed me hello and presented the flowers. At dinner with Emma and Jake, Mark was his usual charming self, telling funny stories about his trip and asking the kids about school. Emma told him about her role in the fall play, and he promised he'd be there for opening night. I wondered if he'd actually show up or if he'd already promised to attend some other event in his parallel life. After the kids went to bed, Mark and I sat on the couch with wine, and he put his arm around me. "I can't believe it's been 15 years, he said softly. "Best decision I ever made, marrying you." I looked at him carefully, searching for any sign of guilt, but his face showed nothing but contentment. I smiled and clinked my wine glass against his. "Tomorrow night is going to be unforgettable," I said, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. Thursday morning, I sent the kids to my sister's house after school. Then I spent the afternoon preparing for the dinner party. I set the dining room table for 6, using our wedding china and fancy crystal glasses. I cooked Mark's favorite meal, herb-crusted lamb chops, roasted vegetables, and garlic mashed potatoes. I even baked the same chocolate cake from our wedding reception. Around 5, I texted Lisa from Mark's secret phone with our address and a reminder about 7 o'clock. She responded with a thumbs up. I felt nauseous thinking about those kids getting dressed up for what they thought was a normal work dinner, but I couldn't stop now. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth. Both families deserved to understand who Mark really was. Mark got home at 6 and whistled appreciatively when he saw the dining room. "Wow, you went all out," he said, wrapping his arms around me. "This looks incredible." By 6:45, everything was ready. Mark kept trying to steer me toward the bedroom, but I insisted we needed to eat while everything was hot. He poured us both wine and raised his glass. "To 15 more years," he said. I touched my glass to his, but couldn't swallow past the rage lodged in my throat. The doorbell rang at 7 exactly. I watched Mark's face register confusion. "Are you expecting someone?" he asked. I set down my wine glass and walked to the front door with my heart pounding. This was it. I pulled open the door to find Lisa standing there with her 2 children, all dressed nicely and smiling politely. "Hi," Lisa said brightly. "I'm so sorry we're a few minutes late. Traffic was worse than Mark said. You must be his boss's wife." She extended her hand. I shook it automatically. "Actually," I said, my voice steady, "I'm Mark's wife, Jennifer. Why don't you all come in?" I watched confusion cross Lisa's face. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Mark's wife. But I'm Mark's wife." From inside the house, I heard Mark's voice calling out, "Jen, who's at the door?" And then his footsteps. Lisa's eyes went wide as Mark appeared behind me, and the recognition hit her like a physical blow. Mark froze. For the first time since I'd known him, his careful composure completely shattered. His face went through confusion, recognition, terror, and then resignation. "Lisa," he whispered, and that single word confirmed everything. The little boy tugged on Lisa's shirt. "Mom, what's going on? Is Dad in trouble?" I stepped back and gestured for them to come inside. "Please come in. Dinner's getting cold, and we have so much to talk about." Lisa looked like she wanted to run, but she seemed paralyzed by shock. The children, sensing something was very wrong, pressed closer to their mother. Mark found his voice. "I can't explain this," he said, looking between us with wild eyes. "Just give me a chance to explain." I laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. "Oh, I'm sure you can explain it, Mark. You've been explaining things for years. But tonight, you're going to explain it to both of your families at once." Lisa's face had gone completely pale. "Both families," she repeated. She looked at me, really looked at me, taking in my dress, my wedding ring, the anniversary decorations. "How long?" she asked. 15 years, I said quietly. "We got married 15 years ago today, actually." Lisa's knees buckled, and I lunged forward to catch her arm, helping her to the couch. The children followed, the little girl starting to cry. Mark stood frozen, and I could see him trying to formulate some response. But there was no spin that could fix this. I brought Lisa water while Mark knelt in front of her, trying to take her hands. She jerked away violently. "Don't touch me," she spat. "Don't you dare touch me." She pulled her children close, and the little boy asked, "Is Dad going to jail?" Mark finally started talking, a rambling mess of half-explanations. He said it started 7 years ago when he met Lisa at a conference, that she got pregnant, and he couldn't abandon his child. He said he loved both of us, loved all the children, that he'd been trying to be a good father and husband to everyone. He insisted he'd never wanted to hurt anyone. Lisa cut him off with a bitter laugh. "You proposed to me, Mark. We had a wedding. Our families were there." She turned to me with tears streaming down her face. "Did he tell you he was working that weekend?" "Our wedding was on a Saturday in June 7 years ago." I thought back and realized he'd told me he had an important training session. I'd been disappointed, but understanding. The full scope of his deception was staggering. He hadn't just been having an affair. He'd fully committed to creating a second complete life with marriage and children. He'd been present for pregnancies and births and first steps, just for a different set of children. He'd managed calendars and finances across 2 households, maintaining relationships with 2 different sets of in-laws. I sat down across from Lisa and Mark. The little girl stared at me with wide eyes. "Are you our dad's other wife?" she asked in a small voice. I nodded slowly. "I am. Or I was. I'm not sure what I am anymore." She considered this. "Do we have other brothers and sisters?" And that's when I started crying too, because these innocent kids were the collateral damage. Lisa stood up abruptly, grabbing her children's hands. "We're leaving," she announced. Mark jumped up, reaching for her, but she backed away. "Lisa, please, we need to talk about this," he pleaded. She laughed harshly. "Talk about what, Mark?" "About how you've been lying to me every single day for 7 years. About how our entire marriage is a fraud." I stood too, my voice calmer than expected. "Lisa, wait. I know you want to leave, and I understand. But maybe we should all sit down and figure out what happens next, especially for the kids." I gestured to all 4 children, even though mine weren't here. "They're going to have questions, and Mark owes us both a full accounting of everything." Lisa looked at me with something between hatred and kinship. "How did you find out?" she asked finally, sinking back onto the couch. I explained about finding the phone, seeing their photos, reading through messages. "I'm sorry I tricked you into coming here," I added. "But I needed him to face us both at the same time." What followed was the most surreal conversation of my life. For the next 2 hours, the 3 of us sat in my living room while Mark confessed to everything. The children sat quietly on the floor playing with toys I'd pulled out, too young to fully understand but absorbing the tension. Mark explained his system for managing 2 families. He'd exaggerated his travel requirements to both of us, creating blocks of time with each family. He'd told me he was building his territory when he was actually in Riverside, and told Lisa he had demanding clients when he was home with me. The financial logistics were equally elaborate. He'd maintained separate bank accounts, deposited paychecks strategically, used credit cards tied to different addresses. Both Lisa and I had some access to money, but not complete visibility. He'd taken out loans neither of us knew about, presumably to fund his expensive double life. He'd borrowed against retirement, maxed out credit cards, even taken a second mortgage on Lisa's house without telling her. Lisa asked how he'd managed holidays. Mark explained with grotesque detail that he'd created a rotating system, spending major holidays alternating between families with work excuses. Last Christmas, when I thought he was working, he'd been with Lisa and her kids. The Christmas before, he'd been with us while telling Lisa he had a business obligation. Birthdays were easier since they were scattered throughout the year, though he admitted sometimes important events conflicted and he'd had to make agonizing choices about which child's milestone to attend. Mark genuinely seemed to believe he'd been doing his best. He kept saying he loved all of us, that he'd never meant to hurt anyone, that he'd been trapped by his own choices. In his twisted logic, continuing the deception had seemed kinder than revealing the truth. He'd convinced himself he was being a good person by maintaining both families rather than abandoning one. Lisa asked the question I'd been afraid to hear. "Did you ever plan to tell us? Or were you just going to keep doing this forever?" Mark's silence was damning. Finally, he admitted he didn't know, that he'd been taking it day by day. Maybe the kids would grow up and become independent. Maybe one of us would leave him for other reasons. Or maybe he'd just keep going indefinitely. By 9 o'clock, Lisa was ready to leave. Her children had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted by the emotional chaos. She gathered them up, and I walked her to the door while Mark sat motionless in the living room. At the door, Lisa turned to me. "I don't know whether to hate you or hug you." I felt the same way. We weren't enemies, but we weren't quite friends. We were both casualties of the same man's spectacular betrayal. After Lisa left, I told Mark to get out. He tried to argue, to plead for a chance to explain more, but I was done listening. He packed a bag with shaking hands, and as he stood at the door, he tried one more time. "Jen, I know I don't deserve it, but is there any chance you can forgive me? Eventually?" I looked at him and saw a stranger. "No," I said simply. "There isn't." The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers and difficult conversations and breaking the news to Emma and Jake. They were devastated, confused, angry. How do you explain to your children that their father has other children he'd been keeping secret? How do you help them process that half the time he said he loved them, he was saying the same things to someone else? Lisa and I ended up talking a few more times as we navigated divorce proceedings. Mark had been even more financially reckless than either of us knew, with debt and loans neither family knew about. Untangling his finances was a nightmare. But more than the money, we'd both lost years of our lives to a lie. The story somehow leaked and made local news. Suddenly, I was the woman whose husband had a secret family. People had opinions about what I should have noticed. The judgment was suffocating, as if I was somehow complicit. But when you love someone and trust them completely, you see what they show you. Mark had been meticulous and convincing, and both Lisa and I had simply believed him. It's been almost a year now since that anniversary dinner. Mark is living in a small apartment, spending court-mandated time with all 4 children on a rotating schedule. Both Lisa and I got divorced, and we've built a strange friendship based on shared trauma and the reality that our children are half-siblings who deserve to know each other. The kids spend time together now, sometimes trying to build relationships out of the wreckage their father created. I still teach middle school, still live in the same house, though I'm planning to sell it soon. Emma is in therapy, and Jake has started acting out. They're grieving not just the loss of their father as they knew him, but the loss of the narrative of their own childhoods. Every happy memory is now tinged with knowledge of what was happening off camera. Sometimes people ask if I regret the anniversary dinner, if I wish I'd confronted Mark differently. But honestly, I don't. That moment of forcing him to face us both simultaneously was necessary. It was brutal and dramatic and probably traumatizing for everyone, especially the children. But continuing the lie would have been worse. Both families deserved to learn the truth together. The hardest part hasn't been the anger or grief. It's been rebuilding my sense of reality and learning to trust my own judgment again. If I could be so completely fooled by someone I slept next to for 15 years, how can I ever trust anyone again? I find myself questioning everything now. It's exhausting. But there are small moments of hope too. Emma made honor roll last semester. Jake joined a robotics club. Lisa and I text sometimes about logistics, but occasionally about how we're doing, and there's comfort in having someone who truly understands. I've started thinking about what I want my life to look like moving forward, not as someone's wife, but as myself. The anniversary dinner destroyed my marriage, but it also freed me. In that moment, standing at the door inviting Lisa inside, I felt powerful in a way I'd never experienced. For once, I wasn't the victim of Mark's choices. I was the architect of truth. Mark had controlled the narrative for 15 years. That night, I took control back. Would I recommend this approach to others who discover infidelity? Probably not. It was traumatic for everyone involved. But I don't regret it either. Sometimes kindness enables continued deception. Sometimes mercy just means more time for the liar to craft their narrative. What I did was brutal, but it was honest in a way nothing else could have been. The story has taken on a life of its own online. Someone shared it on Reddit, and it went viral. People have opinions about what I should have done differently. It's strange and invasive, but it's also connected me with other people who've been through similar betrayals. I've gotten messages from people around the world who found out their partners were living double lives. There's comfort in knowing I'm not alone. What I want people to understand is that this isn't really about revenge. It's about truth and the desperate human need for reality to make sense. When you discover you've been living in an elaborate lie, the ground disappears beneath you. The only way to find footing again is to drag the truth into the light. That anniversary dinner was me refusing to let Mark control the story anymore. It's been a year of therapy and tears and slowly rebuilding. I still have bad days where I can't get out of bed. I still see couples married for decades and feel bitter jealousy. But I also have good days now, days where I laugh with my kids or feel hopeful about the future. The bad days are getting less frequent. I've started thinking about dating again, though it terrifies me. How do you trust someone after what I went through? My therapist says not everyone is Mark, that his capacity for deception doesn't mean everyone is lying. I've been on a few coffee dates, nothing serious, just testing the waters. It feels vulnerable and scary, and also kind of exciting. The legal stuff is finally wrapping up. Divorces are finalized, custody arrangements are set. Mark is paying child support for all 4 kids, though given his employment situation, it's not much. Both Lisa and I will be working extra jobs for years, but at least we're not working to support his lies anymore. I drove past the restaurant last week where Mark and I had our first date. I felt sad thinking about that younger version of me, so hopeful and in love. If I could go back and warn her, would I? Part of me says yes, save her from this pain. But then I wouldn't have Emma and Jake. So maybe I'd just tell her to pay attention, to trust her instincts. The anniversary dinner was the end of my old life and the beginning of whatever comes next. It was the night I chose truth over comfort, exposure over continued deception. It was the night I looked my husband in the eye and made him face what he'd done. It was brutal and messy, but it was mine. If you're reading this and you've been betrayed, if your partner has been living a double life, I want you to know that you'll survive this. It doesn't feel like it right now. It feels like you're dying, but you won't. You'll wake up tomorrow and the next day, and slowly it will hurt less. You'll rebuild. You'll find yourself again underneath all the lies. And if you're the person living the double life, maintaining separate families through elaborate deception, I want you to know that it will catch up with you. Maybe not today or next month, but eventually the house of cards will collapse. When it does, the damage will be catastrophic. Your children will never fully trust you again. Your partners will spend years in therapy. Stop now. Come clean now. For me, I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm showing up for my kids, doing my job, building a life that's smaller than what I thought I had but more real. I'm learning to be okay with uncertainty. I'm figuring out who Jennifer is when she's not performing the role of Mark's wife. The house still echoes with memories of that night. I can still see Lisa's face when she realized who I was, still hear Sophie asking if we were her dad's other wife. But I'm moving out soon to a place with no ghosts. Emma and Jake are excited about the new house, about fresh starts. We're going to be okay. All of us. We're going to heal and rebuild. That anniversary dinner was supposed to celebrate 15 years of marriage. Instead, it became the moment I chose myself, chose truth, chose to stop living in someone else's fiction. It was the night everything fell apart, but it was also the night everything real began. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd still invite them to dinner. I'd still open that door and let reality come crashing in. Because living in truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living in lies. So, here's my message to everyone reading this. Truth matters. Reality matters. The integrity of your life matters more than comfort. If something feels off, investigate. If someone's stories don't add up, ask questions. And if you discover you've been deceived, know that you have the right to expose that truth in whatever way you need to find peace. You don't owe protection to someone who didn't protect you. My name is Jennifer, and I found out my husband had another family, so I invited them to our anniversary dinner. It destroyed my marriage, traumatized my children, and upended my entire life. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat because I refuse to build my life on lies. I chose truth, and truth chose me back, and now I'm building something real on solid ground. If this story resonated with you, if you've been through something similar or know someone who has, please share it. These stories need to be told because betrayal thrives in silence. Hit that like button if you believe truth matters more than comfortable lies. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who chose reality over fiction, who survived betrayal and came out stronger. And most importantly, trust yourself. Trust your instincts. Trust that you deserve honesty and a life built on truth. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps someone out there feel less alone in their pain and more empowered to demand the truth they deserve.